By the late 1990s, Capcom was firing on all cylinders. They were still riding the high that was Street Fighter II, and they continued their domination of the fighting game genre with Street Fighter III and its Marvel crossover games that had been well received by both fans and critics. Mega Man kept up the same pace, with its releases in the platform genre, as well as entering the 3D space with its sub-series Mega Man Legends. But among these was a newcomer that was picking up steam. That newcomer being the survival horror series Resident Evil, that just released their second game in the series that was extremely successful, both critically and commercially in 1998. But before Resident Evil 2 was even being developed, in 1996, Capcom tasked Resident Evil 1's director Shinji Mikami and a team at Capcom Planning Room 2, that would later be known as Capcom Production Studio 4, to work on a project set in a jungle environment, where the player would fight enemies such as snakes and gorillas. This project wouldn't get very far, because at the very beginning of the next year, its production would halt, and all hands were then shifted over to work on Resident Evil 2, which was having its own development woes. These issues all stemmed from the staff being unhappy with what they had created, resulting in them scrapping the nearly completed game and starting over. After RE2 released, the same fate would befall the halted project, as it too would be scrapped in order to create a better product. Shinji Mikami would be both this game's director and producer, with the same team he had before returning. The project was now in full development, but there would be a couple of changes to this version when compared to its previous one. The first is that it would be a spiritual successor of sorts to the Resident Evil series, with it straying from RE's fantasy elements and leaning more into the realm of reality. The second change would be the type of enemies you'd face in the game, with Shinji Mikami drawing inspiration from a very specific film franchise that just had another in its series release. If the title of this video doesn't give you a clear signal of what that film was, then don't worry, I got you. It was none other than Leprechaun 4 in Space, a continuation of the beloved movie series that continued to get better with each release, with my personal favorite being Leprechaun in the Hood, as I feel its Golden Flute storyline is second to none, and the main character's aspirations of becoming a star rapper hit really close to home for me. But I can't blame Shinji Mikami for his choice of film, as he could have gone with another hit that came out in the 90s, like Titanic, or Good Will Hunting, and that would have been a nightmare. Speaking of nightmare...
Alan.
Oh man, thanks for waking me up, Raptor. But my name isn't Alan. Well, anyway, I had this awful nightmare where the creator of Resident Evil made a game off the Leprechaun franchise, and I had the desire to be a rapper. It was horrible. Let's just be thankful that both of those things aren't real. And instead, Shinji Mikami drew inspiration from the Jurassic Park franchise, with the sequel film, The Lost World, that released in May of 1997. The reason he chose dinosaurs is because of how strong and fearsome they were, which obviously made them more of a threat than Resident Evil's zombie enemies. Another major change this game had was the engine the developers were working with. Instead of reusing the one they worked on with RE2, they decided to create one from the ground up, with them focusing on the use of fully 3D environments. If you played the RE series at the time, then you know this was a big difference, as the mainline games use pre-rendered backgrounds all the way up to the third game in the series. Mikami and his team went this route due to them wanting an engine that could handle cinematic action. But this change would come with a price, as hardware limitations reared its ugly head. An idea that remained from the previous version was the use of jungle environments. I mean, it made sense as the game involved dinosaurs, and took inspiration from Jurassic Park. But it was not meant to be, as the team was unable to create a jungle environment that was both detailed and didn't run like complete shit. This led to the jungle being scrapped entirely, with the developers shifting to indoor environments, akin to the Umbrella laboratories used in the RE series. A big difference between this game and Resident Evil was how they marketed it. Instead of slapping the survival horror tag onto it, they decided to label it as panic horror. What does that mean exactly? The hell if I know. Though it's apparently because of how the dinosaurs act in the game. But just how did they know how dinosaurs acted? Or even then, looked. During this funky moment in the 90s, the world pretty much collectively thought that all dinosaurs were scaly beasts like the reptiles we all know and love. In today's time, we know more about them, with many concluding that not all dinosaurs were scaly, and that some were feathery. But let's be real, would we be scared of a giant-ass chicken chasing us in a game? The answer is a resounding yes.
Oh shit.
But that's straying away from the topic a bit. So, the developers scanned the only images they had at the time to create the enemies of the game, which all turned out to be the same things we would see in the Jurassic Park movies. As for how they acted, the developers based the enemy AI on current, non-extinct carnivores like lions and tigers. Did they research any of this knowledge? Nope. They went with pure human instinct to dictate how these creatures acted, which also seemed to act like they do in Jurassic Park. But that's just me speculating on that front. In spring of 1999, the public would get their very first look at Dino Crisis at the Tokyo Game Show. And here is where I would put that footage.
If I had one!
So, instead, here is an old-ass trailer for the game. To say the people didn't have long to wait to get their hands on the game is an understatement, as only a few months later, Dino Crisis for the PlayStation would release in July that same year in Japan, with North America getting it 2 months later in September, and Europe in October. The game was met with positive reviews across the board, with there obviously being comparisons to Resident Evil. Some were good comparisons, while others were not. But regardless of what was said, that didn't stop the game from selling 300,000 units during its first week of release in Japan, with its overall worldwide sales surpassing 2.4 million units. And that's just for the PlayStation 1 version. 1 year after Dino Crisis came out, a Dreamcast and PC port would release. These weren't reviewed as favorably as the PlayStation's, with many complaints being that there weren't any significant changes made to a year-old game. However, even with its lower score, the superior version would be the Dreamcast's, as it didn't suffer from texture distortion, which was a graphical issue that was pretty common on many PlayStation games at the time. But that doesn't mean much, as nobody seemed to own a Dreamcast. There was also a Game Boy Color version in development around the same time, but it was cancelled, which means we all dodged one hell of a bullet. After these releases, Dino Crisis would only be re-released on PlayStation hardware, with it being added to the PlayStation Network in 2006 and in 2024 for PlayStation Plus. 1 year later, GOG would release an updated version that would allow it to run on modern hardware, with it also having 4K support. A year after that, Gabe Newell's cash cow and yacht funding storefront Steam would also release this version of Dino Crisis. I will be playing the GOG updated version for this video, as I don't have any recording equipment for my PlayStation due to me being broke as shit. The structure of this video will be the same as my Resident Evil ones, where I cover the entire story while going over the game's mechanics. Afterwards, I'll go over its extra content and audio. If you've seen those Resident Evil videos, then you know that I throw some comedy in there to mix things up a bit. This will be no different, so let that be a warning to you. So without delaying any further, let's dive into the story of Dino Crisis. But before we get to the story, I decided to make a new intro, so please give me your opinion below.
I am not
Gamer.
I have relationships with women and sex with men.
And I got news for you. That means you
Gamer. A gamer production. The game takes place in the very futuristic year of 2009, and our story begins in the most horrific way possible, with us checking our emails. A report that was filed from someone named Tom goes over how he infiltrated a facility under the guise of a researcher, in hopes of finding information about the production of secret weaponry. Unfortunately, he has found nothing of note in the matter, but he did come across an individual that was presumed to be dead. The individual is named Dr. Edward Kirk, and he was the lead energy researcher for the United States government before his presumed death 3 years ago. Leading up to that point, he proposed a third-generation clean energy that was more efficient than nuclear power to the US government. Things seemingly worked in his favor for a time, but eventually the US government lost interest and cut his funding, leading to his lab being shut down. He is now working on a non-weapons-based project that is nearing its final stages of development, and at the end of his report, Tom recommends immediate action to be taken to extract Dr. Kirk from the facility. We then see the people Tom emailed flying in by helicopter, with their apparent leader giving them orders that are very hard to hear due to someone opening the helicopter's doors.
Once you hit the ground, head straight to the designated convergence point.
They parachute out and descend down to an island. When they land, we finally get to see who the team consists of. And they are... Gale, Regina, Rick, and... wait, wasn't there 4 of you? Well, there actually was, but the idiot missed his landing by a long shot, resulting in him landing in the dark-ass forest. But don't worry, he isn't alone, as he starts to hear loud stomping sounds and trees shifting. Instead of hiding, the Nimrod brings out a flashlight, which makes him the only visible thing nearby. He catches a glimpse of something in the flashlight's beam and starts to run like his life depends on it. Which it indeed does, as a T-Rex is charging right after him. But the bastard's poor legs are too small to outpace the big son of a bitch, resulting in him getting eaten. I guess I'll have to redo the team intro. Gale, Regina, Rick, and...
That is one big pile of shit.
Cooper. Back with the rest of the group, team leader Gale tries his best edgy leader act by calling Rick and Regina kitties, and telling them that playtime is now over. When Gale notices that the lights aren't on in a nearby guardhouse, Rick then tries his best funny man act by insinuating the guards partied all night. After Gale gives them the go-ahead to follow him into the next area, Rick informs Regina that he'll be stationing himself in the facility's control room, so he can have access to the security system. Gale, on the other hand, is doing his best Barry Burton impression by inspecting a puddle of blood on the ground nearby. Regina, for some reason, asks if he had anything to do with this, and he shrugs it off, saying the brass from the shell casings that are a couple of feet away from him are still warm. He concludes that whatever the guards were shooting at killed them with ease, even ripping through the metal fence right by them. He tasks her with sweeping the remaining area while he goes back to doing nothing.
Very funny.
This is when we finally get control of Regina, who is the only playable character in the story mode, which is quite the departure from the Resident Evil series by this point in time, as both RE1 and 2 had 2 playable characters. I'll go more in depth with how she controls a bit later, but let's continue on with the story first. After grabbing a key from a small storage room, Rick radios Regina to tell her that the facility is devoid of people, and that he can't access the security system due to the power being cut. Her and Gale head in the direction of the backup generator, and along the way, Gale comes across a grueling scene, which gives us one of the most memorable lines in the entire series.
That's disgusting.
Upon their inspection of the corpse, they discover it's riddled with tooth marks, with them concluding it's from some sort of animal.
Okay, let's move on.
A ways forward is the backup generator, which gives us our very first puzzle. Inside a fuse box are 4 colored batteries. Their colors are red, gray, green, and blue. Below them are 3 buttons, with each one rotating the positions of 2 batteries. On the wall beside the fuse box are 4 levers that are outlined with the same colors as the batteries. The way to solve the puzzle is shifting the batteries to the same color order as the switches. And when you do, the generator nearby powers up. But on Regina's way back outside, gunfire can be heard, with Gale screaming out right after. Outside, he is nowhere to be found, but whatever attacked him can be heard nearby. Regina calls out to Gale down a cliff, as she apparently thinks he managed to fall off of it in the minute time frame she left him outside. Something else that's missing in the area is the corpse they discovered on their way to the generator, as it has seemingly been dragged off. This is when Regina is ambushed by her very first dinosaur, the smart and agile Velociraptor. What does she do in such a scenario? The tried and true method of running the fuck away. But this doesn't work like it did in the older RE games, where you'd be safe from an enemy after entering a new location, as these are able to jump over low fencing and actually use doors. Just not the next one, as the Velociraptor decides Regina isn't worth the effort.
Fuck you.
Rick then chimes in to tell her that the control system is working again, and when he asks what's happening on her end, she tells him that she had lost Gale like he was a small child. My words, not hers. Rick doesn't take it too hard though, but when she tries explaining it was because of a dinosaur, Rick jokingly asks if it was Barney's doing. I mean, we can't blame him. This shit was supposed to be grounded in Shinji Mikami's words.
This isn't a joke, you idiot.
They decide to regroup at the control room, and instead of looking for Gale, they decide that sticking with the mission is the best course of action. Rick, being a tech guy, stays in the safe and cozy control room, while Regina risks actual life and limb searching the first floor.
After we finished our sweep of the ground level.
The first room she'll enter is an office, which is this game's very first save room. These work a whole lot differently than those in Resident Evil. If you played those games, which I'm sure most of you have, the save rooms are where you can save your game, store and retrieve items in the item box, and rest as no enemy is able to enter them. The only way to save in the older REs is by using an ink ribbon on a typewriter. These are a scarce resource, meaning you'll have to think when and where to save so you don't run out of them. This adds a ton of tension, as dying has the potential of setting your progress back quite a bit, and with enemies like Mr. X in RE2, and Nemesis in the soon-to-be-released RE3, this can happen in the blink of an eye. The item box in RE, like I said a second ago, allows you to store and retrieve your items inside them. These are all tethered to one another. What I mean by this is that when you store items in one box, these items can be found inside another in a different location. And these boxes are a damn near necessity, as your character has a limited inventory. And having things such as weapons, ammo, healing items, and key items littered throughout the game, you'll find yourself visiting these often. Dino Crisis throws both of these away, as there are no item boxes, at least not how RE had them, and absolutely no required item to save. Once you're done in a save room, the game will ask if you want to save when you interact with a door leading out of it. And that's it. Truthfully, I don't know how I feel about this, as I kinda like how you had to think before you saved in Resident Evil. As for the item boxes this game has, you'll come across an item called a plug in this save room. This is the first of many, and they are kind of like this game's ink ribbon. But instead of saving with them, they are consumed to unlock these things called emergency boxes. And there are 3 different types marked by different colors, and they all have select items inside them. The green box contains medical supplies, the red contains ammo, and the yellow contains both ammo and medical supplies. But no matter what these contain when you open them, you are allowed to store whatever you'd like inside them. And these, like the item box, are also linked to one another, with the difference being that they are only linked to boxes of the same color. For example, the green emergency box can only access other green emergency boxes, and not any of the other colors. This may sound like a problem, but the game provides you with plenty of plugs as long as you explore and inspect your surroundings. The only thing that stays the same here from RE is that no enemy can enter the save room. Like you saw a bit ago, the Velociraptors are able to follow Regina into other rooms, so this is actually quite useful compared to the RE save rooms, as Nemesis would be the only enemy that could follow you into other rooms. But that's enough save room talk. Let's continue on. Inside the save room is the shotgun, something called a DDK input disc that has the letter H on it, one of two panel keys that has the letters LEO on it, and a switch that turns on a nearby computer. On it is some information pertaining to the DDK disc Regina just grabbed. And apparently, there is a code version of the same letter disc that needs to be obtained before either of them can be used on their respective locking device. The code version is found on the top of a locker in the locker room right by the office. Also in the locker room is a journal from one of the facility's guards. There isn't much of note inside, besides a code that unlocks the safe back in the office. And what lies inside kinda looks like a glass pipe.
Oh my God!
But the guards aren't that fun. It's instead a key for the entrance to the facility. Using the key on the door takes Regina outside, where she finds yet another corpse. By it is the DDK-N code disk, and Mark Doyle's personnel file with a registration number. It's of no use yet, but it's best to remember the number. Back indoors, Regina takes some stairs up to the second floor, and comes across the DDK-H lock. And here is the first of many DDK puzzles. This one is very simple, but they progressively get more difficult and change how the rules work depending on the lock. At the top is the code that consists of many random letters, and below it is the key that contains a few of the letters that are in the code. In order to solve this DDK puzzle, we simply need to enter the code letters that aren't repeated in the key. That gives us head. I wish. Going through the door, Regina finds an injured researcher resting against a desk. She lies to him about being part of the rescue team and asks where she can find Dr. Kirk. He calls Kirk a fool, but he doesn't seem to know his location. But he does hand her the second panel key, which has the letters SOL on them, which goes well with the researcher because he is sad out of luck when it comes to living, as the poor bastard dies right after. Behind the desk is the DDK-N input disk, and a locked wooden panel box that requires the two panel keys to unlock. Inside is a locked safe with a 6-digit code. But where do we find this 6-digit code? Well, here's the stupid part. The code can be found on both of the panel keys. Instead of letters being on each of the keys, they are actually numbers. So we just need to flip them over, with the second key being the first one. That gives us the code 705037. Honestly, this is kind of a dumb puzzle. Why on earth would the keys that were needed to reach the safe also have the damn code on them? Yeah, I get that it's flipped, but that's still completely stupid. It just ends up being a kind of forced puzzle in my eyes, which, if I recall, is the only one of its kind in the game. But that's enough ranting about this simple puzzle. Inside the unlocked box within a box is a keycard with the letter L carved into it. Now here is where things get serious, because as soon as we take one step away from the panel, the T-Rex literally pops its head into the room through the window. Aww, it's resting its little arm. Poor thing must be tired. And hungry too. After eating Nameless Researcher number 1, it comes back to try and eat Regina. Don't worry though, I know exactly what to do here, as I watched Jurassic Park, and that movie taught me not to move in a situation like this one.
This vision's based on movement.
God damn you, Steven Spielberg! Getting back to this spot and shooting the T-Rex a couple times gets it to back away, retreating into the dark of night.
Fuck you.
Going back downstairs, Regina walks over to the DDK-N lock, but is interrupted by Rick, who tells her that he has unlocked the first floor shutters, and caught a glimpse of someone near the training room, which so happens to be past the DDK endlock, which isn't too difficult to solve. Like last time, there are a bunch of random letters on the top code, and a select few repeat letters below in the key. Simply ignoring the letters in the code that are repeated in the key gives us the password newcomer. Down the hall is the lecture room, and at the end, by a whiteboard, is the backup generator room B1 key. And right when Regina grabs it, a raptor pops in from the ceiling. Instead of outright killing her, it just bitch slaps her with its tail. This is where we get our very first danger event. Think of these as a prototype to QuickTime events. At the bottom of the screen flashes the word danger, and at this moment, you must button mash like Regina's life depends on it, because in most cases, it actually does. These are obviously easy to do, as it doesn't require specific button inputs to succeed, but there will be times when it catches you off guard, so be sure to pay attention. This will be the first of many danger events that can be triggered, and failing this one only results in Regina being damaged a bit. But the ones that are truly interesting are the ones that lead to an instant game over. For those, I'll show their fail state first, before continuing on with them being done correctly. I'll still point out when they all happen though, just so you get a sense of how many are within the game. Before the raptor can get his jaws on Regina, Gale blows in like the wind. Get it? Because his name is Gale? I know it's spelt different, but that was still funny, damn it! Regina, who is ecstatic not to be dead herself, is happy to see that he is alive, and has impeccable timing when it comes to killing things. But the poor dude clearly doesn't watch movies, as Regina has to bring him up to speed on what they are actually fighting, as the poor bastard is still calling them lizards, and hey! That fucking thing's body moved!
Mission has gone sour.
Does anyone care about that?
It's always eat or be eaten out in the battlefield, no matter who or what you're up against.
What are you facing out there, Gale?
Any word on
Cannibals?
the dock yet?
Forget it. Taking a shortcut through an office back to the outdoors area near where they landed, Regina is caught off guard by a raptor, resulting in another danger event. She manages to push it off and reaches the locked fence door leading to the backup generator. By it is a charged battery that can be placed inside a nearby fuse box. This is a puzzle like the one at the previous generator. You simply need to shift the batteries in the order of red, blue, green, and gray. Now that it's powered up, Rick radios Regina asking her to come to the control room.
There's something I have to talk to you about.
When she arrives, Rick informs her that Gale saw someone on one of the underground floor's cameras. He opens the shutter leading down there, but their plan to head in the unknown person's direction is interrupted by one of their team members' distress signals. They don't know that Cooper is being digested at the moment, so Regina assumes it's him. But Rick remembers that Tom, the guy who sent them the email that led to this shit show, is still here. The signal is coming from the east of the rear entrance, where the group came from. Rick starts to head towards the door, but Gale interjects, telling them to focus on the person they saw on the camera, as it could be Dr. Kirk. Rick doesn't accept the order though, as he believes that they should help one of their own before doing anything else. They both decide that their ideas are best, leaving Regina with a choice, and this game's very first major story decision. She could either follow Gale's idea for searching for clues on Dr. Kirk, or Rick's idea of rescuing their distressed team member immediately. Something the game doesn't tell you is that each of these choices lean more towards certain gameplay aspects. For instance, siding with Gale leads to more action-focused segments, where you'll be fighting more dinosaurs, while siding with Rick, on the other hand, leads to more puzzle-based segments. For the most part, both choices lead to the same outcome. Except for the final choice, of course. But we'll get to that. And with the exception of the final choice, I'll go over both paths before moving on, as like I said before, they end up leading to the same outcome in the end. The first choice we'll go over is Rick's, as that's what I chose when I first played. Once Regina reaches the back gate, she catches a glimpse of Rick, but for some reason, she doesn't try to get his attention. So now she must try to catch back up with him. And when she does, the asshole is going to get an earful for leaving a fucking trail of raptors for her to deal with. To make matters even worse, the dinosaur with one of the most questionable uses of the letter P in its name,
Pteranodon.
which also has the annoying ability of flight, is in the very next room. And before anything can be done about it, one knocks Regina down and starts picking her up. She drops whatever weapon she is holding, and a danger event begins. Now I know I said I'd skip over all the damage dealing ones, but I just had to keep this one, as the Pteranodon straight up chucks Regina into a giant metal door. Once Regina is back up, you must go to retrieve your weapon, as it won't automatically return to you. I know that may sound obvious, but it's easy to forget about it after button mashing. Going through a nearby door, Regina finally catches up to Rick, who is standing by an injured Tom. When asked what the hell is going on here, Tom mirrors nameless researcher number 1, telling Rick and Regina that Dr. Kirk is insane. Apparently, he isn't working on any type of energy development, but before Tom can explain any further, he hands Regina the DDKL code disk and passes out. Rick then tells Regina that he'll take care of moving Tom, which leaves her with the task of powering up the big-ass elevator outside. On the desk by Tom is a DDKL input disk, which will be needed later. After going through another Pteranodon hellhole, Regina reaches the power room, where the B1 crane keycard is found. But that's not all that we're here for, as this is the location where the elevator can be powered up. That brings us to one of the game's major puzzles. In the center of the room are 6 consoles, with 3 colored buttons on each of them. Those colors are red, blue, and green. Pressing one of the buttons results in Regina laying mad pipe down from a crane towards one of 3 holes in a wall. This must be done in the correct order, or else one of the pipes will get stuck on another, resulting in it being brought back up. The order these must be pressed in are as follows. Press the red button on the lower left console by the fence, the green button on the console sitting by the previously pressed one, and the blue button on the one next to that. Now for the other side. Across the console we just used, we must press the red button, then the green button on the console next to that one, and finally the blue button on the last one. If done correctly, the elevator will be powered up. But on Regina's way back to Rick, those pesky-ass Pteranodons devised a plan so goddamn crazy that it would have to work. Like her encounter at the elevator, Regina is knocked down and grabbed once again. But instead of chucking her at a wall, this motherfucker is trying to turn her into ground beef. And since this is a death danger event, I'll let you guys witness it. While that was pretty funny, if you manage to break free of the Pteranodon's clutches, the poor son of a bitch somehow ends up falling into the fan itself. I truly have no idea how that happened, but I guess the Pteranodon's family will be pondering on that for quite some time. For some reason, the game has us walk back to Rick and Tom to press a single button on the elevator, just to have us walk right back to them and tell them that the elevator is active. Kind of a pointless walk back, but at least it's only one loading screen in between them. With Tom in tow, Rick is still in shock over seeing a real live dinosaur, even making a quip about it being just like that movie, which we obviously know what he is referring to.
Holy Jesus!
Before we continue on, there is a missable danger event that can be accessed at any time while in this location. If you decide to head back in the direction of the passage that leads here, the ground will give way below Regina, resulting in her dangling off the remaining ground's ledge. If you fail the event, then you obviously watch her fall to her death.
No!
Taking the elevator down leads to a warehouse of sorts, where a bunch of metal containers block their way forward. And with Tom dying on them, Rick asks Regina to hurry up and move them. This is yet another puzzle, and truthfully, I hate it. Because instead of simply moving the crane manually, we get this fucking Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories bullshit, where we need to select cards to program where the crane goes and what container it hooks and drops. Like, thanks a ton Tetsuya Nomura for changing the much beloved combat of Kingdom Hearts by turning it into a goddamn grind fest. Also, why was it on the Game Boy Advance? Do you realize what you're doing to us? Yikes. I really went off topic there. Let's just move on. On paper, the puzzle isn't that bad. Until you make a mistake and have to sit and watch it unfold in real fucking time. I got one life to live here, game, and I'm already wasting it making low quality videos. I don't need even more of it wasted. And even when you do the puzzle correctly, it's still slow as all hell. I know I might be complaining a bit here, but let's just be thankful there aren't any more crane puzzles. Right? If you know how to do this, you can complete the puzzle in the quickest way possible in 3 moves. And by moves, I mean 3 card selection groups. The first move is up 2, down 1, left 1, hook, right 2, and release. The second move is hook, up 2, left 1, and release. The third and final move is right 2, hook, up 2, and release. With the way clear, Rick takes Tom to the nearby medical room, but during their romantic stroll, the two seemingly forgot that they were in a facility packed with dinosaurs, as they stumble across a sleeping raptor that is clearly pissed off at their presence. I mean, I can't blame it. I'd be pissed off too if someone just walked up into my home. And since they went on ahead, Regina has to play catch-up, which results in her getting ambushed by a raptor that jumps through an electrical cage. This is yet another danger event, and succeeding in it results in the raptor getting electrocuted, sparing Regina from taking damage and wasting ammo. Right outside the medical room, we are greeted by these little guys, who are helping themselves to a dead raptor. They are called Compsognathus, and by themselves, they're no real threat. But when they're in a group, well, they aren't a threat either. When they spot Regina, they all bum rush her in an attempt to jump up and attack her. While this may sound bad, it's far from it, because they don't ever actually do that as long as you keep moving. They only end up being tiny roadblocks that just need to be shifted over a bit by running into them. Inside the medical room...
That's disgusting.
Damn, Regina! Have some decorum!
He's dead.
As I was saying, inside the medical room, we see Rick standing over Tom's corpse. Regina tries to comfort him by telling him it's not his fault, but this has clearly affected Rick, who then tells her that he'll be heading back to the control room. Well, to the living goes the spoils. On a desk by Tom's body is a key card that will have multiple uses. First allows Regina to enter the strategy room. Sitting on the center table is the DDKE input disk, something called the FC device, and a file about said device. Apparently, it is used to scan fingerprints, that can then be uploaded to a terminal to overwrite the keycard we just got from the medical room to give us access to other parts of the facility. The first use of the FC device is right inside the elevator hall leading to the lecture room. Using it to scan the fingerprint of the dead body on the floor, and taking the scan over to the office, there is a terminal that can upload the print's information over to the keycard. But it's not that simple, as the terminal requires the employee's registration number. But luckily for us, a memo in the same room has Paul Baker's number right on it, which pairs with the corpse fingerprint we just obtained. There was another way to solve this problem as well. You remember Mark Doyle's personnel file that was outside the main entrance that I said we should keep in mind? Well, if we scan the corpse sitting by the file and use the number from it on the terminal, we should be given the same type of facility access. So it really just boils down to your preference on whose number and fingerprint you want to use. I just use Paul Baker's because it's right by the office. Taking the updated keycard to the elevator, Regina is allowed access to the basement level, but not before another danger event pops in through the elevator's roof.
Oh shit, I'm sorry.
The raptor leaps onto Regina, who promptly pushes the fucker off if you succeed in the danger event. But sadly, you must still fight it normally, as nothing flashy really happens. The door opposite of the elevator is locked with a DDKL lock, and the way to solve it is a bit more difficult than the previous few. Like before, a bunch of random letters are up at the code section, while the numbers 3 through 8 are down in the key section. The way to solve this is simple once you know what they want from you. In the same room as the lock, a memo mentions that the number 1 is the letter A, 2 is the letter B, and 3 is the letter C. If we use that knowledge here, then the key is the letters C through H. Removing those from the code leaves us with the word laboratory, which is the password. Before we go through the door, I'm going to quickly go over the differences if you chose Gale's route instead, because truth be told, it's not that much. Following Gale into the basement, the two come across Dr. Kirk, who books it while closing a shutter between them. But before it does, Gale manages to perform a badass roll underneath it, leaving a stunned Regina just sitting there and watching him give pursuit. Gale then calls to pour salt into the wound, telling Regina to drop whatever she's doing and to get over to the other side. Now here is the dumb thing. The game doesn't tell you where to go from here, and you'd think it wouldn't involve going where Rick went, right? Well, it actually does. You need to go to the exact spot where Regina first spotted Rick in his route. Once there, Rick will radio Regina telling her that he was too late to save Tom, and that he was headed back to the control room. Going to the room where we saw Tom in Rick's route, we find him lying dead on the floor. Everything is pretty much the same here, just without Rick and Tom, of course. Okay, let's continue through the DDK-L door we just unlocked. This leads to a whole new section of the facility's basement. The first place to visit here is the research meeting room. And like clockwork, the DDKE input disc is sitting on the table in the center of the room. Attached to the table is a terminal that displays the code 5037, which will be used to unlock the door behind Regina in a little bit. Also on the table is a researcher's journal. Its contents goes over how they initially thought they were working on clean energy, but noticed that the military was involved, and took it upon themselves to investigate Dr. Kirk by searching for his secret laboratory. Down the hall from here is a computer room, where the code can be entered in on a terminal to unlock the door to the gas experiment room. In front of Regina is a terminal and a window that looks into a chamber. Inside is an injured researcher. The only way to access where he's at is by neutralizing the gas that's already in the room. This is yet another puzzle, and doing it correctly will spare the researcher. But if the gas value gets too high, then he will die. To help, there is a hint written on a whiteboard in the previous room. It says that adding a gas to one with a poisonous level under 30 may neutralize it, along with certain color gases ridding other gas mixtures, with red neutralizing green, blue neutralizing orange, and green neutralizing purple. However, we don't need this shit, as there is a 4-button solution. We first must fill the room with red gas,
Stinky.
then green, then red again, and finally blue. With that, the gas has been neutralized, and the researcher has been saved. At least for the moment. Talking with him, he shares the exact same sentiment as nameless researcher number 1 and 2 had about Dr. Kirk. He doesn't know where Kirk is, but hands Regina a keycard to Kirk's personal lab, and then promptly dies. On her way out of the gas chamber, Regina is once again ambushed by a raptor, leading to, you guessed it, another danger event. Succeeding in it has Regina push it off of her and locking it in the gas chamber. This allows you to fill the room with gas, killing it. You monster. Attached to the same hallway as this room is the library. On the keycard nameless researcher number 3 gave us is the code 3695. Using the keycard on a terminal and entering the code in has us overwrite its magnetic pattern, which are fancy words for a puzzle. In the center of the screen are 8 blocks, 4 highlighted and 4 grayed out, with us being able to move 2 blocks at a time by moving the cursor up and down. The way to solve this is by recreating the pattern that's displayed on the lower left side of the screen. There are multiple ways to solve this, but if you copy what I do on screen, then you'll get it done pretty quickly. Once done, we are given the keycard back and a storage container in the center of the room lights up. Inside the container is a keycard with the letter R carved into it. Back in the computer room, there are 2 keycard slots by a terminal. This is where both the L and R keycards can be used. The problem is that they must be used in conjunction with one another. That's when Regina decides to radio Gale to help. And after a quick countdown, they slide their cards into their slots.
Oh yeah.
Revealing a door with the DDKE lock, which we already have the discs for. This puzzle is fairly simple. In the code section are a ton of letters. And below, in the key section, are the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9. To solve this, we just need to use the letters that aren't in the same rows as the numbers. That gives us the password, energy. Past the door is the experiment simulation room, and on a table where said simulation can be ran is a journal. It mentions how the experiment requires items called an initializer and a stabilizer to truly be useful, as the experiment wouldn't be able to be controlled otherwise, leading to excess energy that could affect a radius of 3,300 feet. It mentions that the dinosaurs that are roaming around this facility came from one of these experiments. Obviously, we know this isn't about energy anymore, but this journal solidifies our beliefs. Much to Regina's dismay, Dr. Kirk isn't here, so she heads back out of the lab to inform Gale, who gives a line of dialogue that is extremely funny to me for some reason.
He's not here.
Why? This operation is taking way too long already.
Like, dude, how the fuck would she know? And aren't you supposed to be the leader? Because to me, you sound like a small child with that type of complaining.
Warning.
To make things worse for him, and Regina to a lesser extent, Dr. Kirk sets off the security system, which locks the two of them in the room. Rick isn't able to do anything to help on his end, which puts all the pressure on Regina, because Gale goes from whining child to cranky old man who doesn't understand technology, as he puts some of the blame on the nearby computer.
What's wrong with this thing?
Cool it, Gale.
To lift the lockdown, Regina grabs a screwdriver from a toolbox that's sitting on a chair and uses it to unscrew a plate that's covering a circuit panel. From here, we must solve an energy control puzzle. At the top are 3 patterns that can be rotated in place in the box below. In order to solve it, we must match it with the pattern that's on the lower left of the screen. To do this, we must flip the right pattern to the right once and place it in the box below. Then use the left pattern as is, and finally flip the middle pattern to the right once and place it. But we aren't out of the woods yet, as the lockdown may have been lifted, but the system warns us that this section of the facility will lock again in 10 minutes. Gale radios Rick to update him on the situation, and that's when he tells us that the area is now crawling with dinosaurs. Gale being, well, Gale, says he will take them all out himself. Rick, on the other hand, thinks that they should use the emergency escape hatch inside the experiment simulation room. But it's not that simple, as it's locked with a complex password that will require both him and Regina to crack it. We are now given a choice between Gale's plan and Rick's. Like before, I'll cover one and then come back to do the other. So let's go with Rick's first. Regina runs back into the other room and accesses the terminal.
Got it!
What the fuck? What are you doing in here?
Did we escape?
We? What are you talking about? You have to go home before your brothers find out you're missing.
They're not my brothers. They're a couple of crazy fucks who have kept me prisoner ever since I can remember.
What? What are you saying?
I'm saying they're fucking lunatics who weren't gonna let you go either.
I can't believe this story you're telling me. It's macabre.
Tell me about it.
Aside from the epic video we all just saw, going this route was a huge mistake, because this puzzle sucks so much ass. Not only does it not make sense story-wise, but it also takes forever to complete. There are 3 locks that need to be released, each one having their own code that must be input correctly. The puzzle consists of these 6 cards with the letters A through F being on their other sides. The puzzle aspects of this is that they will randomly flip, revealing one of their letters to you. You must then memorize each one that is shown to you so you can enter them in at the end of their sequence. If you have a bad short-term memory, then this puzzle is already a bit of an issue. But it gets even worse when more than one card flips, and there are different ways that this can happen. The easiest is that a blank card will flip alongside the card with the letter on it, with you obviously needing to pay attention to the one that has the letter on it. The other way is that all cards flip, with you needing to memorize the one that flips back last. This may not sound too bad, but there are 3 sequences in total, with each one getting longer. Plus, the cards flip at an extremely slow pace. I mean, just look at how slow this shit is. I have one miserable life to live, and I'm sitting here watching the video game equivalent of watching paint dry. But there are 2 more problems. The first is that the codes are randomly generated, so you just can't look it up and waste time watching a YouTube video, preferably mine, while the cards flip slowly. The second is that you only get 2 chances to input the codes correctly, or else you'll be forced onto Gale's route. This is truly a painful experience that only gets slightly better when Rick tells us that
You got mad skills.
outside that hellhole, we finally catch up with the rambunctious Dr. Cuck. Wait,
We're representatives from your
you know what?
government.
I'm sticking to it. The Doctor is, to put it lightly, an asshole. But he is put in his place by a pissed off Gale who finally decided to show up.
You're coming with us if I have to knock you out and drag you back myself.
Cuck tries to tell him that he needs to analyze some data about his experiment, but Gale isn't having it. He tries to force the Doctor to come with him, but Cuck has a meltdown. Just have a listen to it.
Shoot me, you idiot. You lame, flat-top, jaw-headed.
After, persuading the Doctor with handing over the key card to the communications room, Regina is given the task to call in the extraction chopper. Gale tells her that he will be dropping Cuck off with Rick, while he tries to not draw any attention onto himself by explaining that he has unfinished business he needs to take care of. And with that, we have finished Rick's route. Time to go back a bit for Gale's. If you opted for the tried and true method of gunning everything down in sight, then you'll quickly realize that Gale left all the heavy lifting to Regina, as she is stuck in the cramped halls with tons of raptors. Besides that, the only difference here is that Gale runs into Dr. Cuck first, and is seemingly more pissed at him than in the other scenario. And with that, we are once again caught up in both scenarios. Let's get to calling in that evac chopper.
You got this whole island set up as your little maze.
The card the Doctor gave Regina is used in the control room to unlock an elevator that takes her up to the comms room. On the wall is a box that contains the antenna key that is used to, well, activate the antenna. From here, it's just a small jog to the antenna control room, where Regina successfully opens up the antenna to communicate with her chopper pilot. But in a rather unfortunate turn of events, we must jog back to the comms room to do so. You'd think they would have put the rooms together or something, but whatever. To make Regina's exercise more exciting, an old friend decides to pay her a visit. Making things worse, the doors near her lock for no reason whatsoever. I guess it's just not her day. Rick then calls to tell her what she already knows, and because she has her hands full with Mr. Rex over there, she politely asks Rick to unlock the doors for her. But in the meantime, her and Rex have a friendly race to the other side of the passage. When she inevitably reaches the end, she must keep the T-Rex at bay by blasting it every time it tries to turn this video into a vorkink. Please do not look up what that is. After a short face-off, Rick unlocks the door. With her back in the comms room, she somehow Skypes the chopper pilot and asks for immediate pickup. This ends up being a mad dash to the helipad, with Regina dodging all sorts of dinosaurs. But this mad dash comes to a screeching halt when we are forced into the good old Resident Evil box-moving puzzle. But before we delve into that nightmare, the third and final weapon, the grenade launcher, is found overlooking the next puzzle. And by overlooking, I mean being just a couple of feet above where she could theoretically leap over a guardrail and skip the puzzle entirely. I guess poor Regina has ankles made of glass, so she must now rely on her muscles made of... muscles. Holy shit, that was bad. But I'm somehow still typing onward with this script. And I'm still typing. You know what? Let's just move on to the puzzle type I detest most with these games. If you played through the RE games that came out around the same time this game did, then you're already accustomed to the box moving puzzles and how they work. If you haven't, then I'm sure the name gives away what must be done in order to solve the puzzle. The thing you may not know is that if you move the incorrect box and become stuck, you must leave the room to reset the boxes to their starting points. This can get extremely annoying, so it's always best to determine what box you should move before doing so, lest you like going in and out of the room over and over again with trial and error. But you don't gotta worry about that. I already put myself through the torture and have the answer. The first box to be moved is the second one to the camera's right. Moving it as far as you can leaves a gap just big enough for Regina to get through. The next is the very first box you walk by in the center of the room. The third box to be moved is next to the one we just pushed, with this one needing to be moved down towards the camera. The fourth is at the last batch of boxes, and it's the one closest to the camera. And finally, we need to push the box near the one we just moved up away from the camera. This allows Regina to reach the double doors leading to the helipad where Rick and Cuck await. However, Gale is nowhere to be found. But the group doesn't seem to care due to the extraction chopper arriving to take them away from this hellhole. This is when Rick jinxes us by saying things could have gone a lot worse. Because right after those words leave his mouth, the T-Rex shows up to fuck things up. Thankfully, the escape is on a helicopter, so the pilot can just take the chopper up away from the T-Rex until it leaves, and then come back down to pick the group up. Right? Right? Well, so much for the pilot and the extraction chopper. But at least Rick and Regina escaped the area while the T-Rex was focused on it. Right? Right? Well, apparently not, as the group just sat there and gawked, throwing away precious time to escape. During all the madness, Dr. Kirk uses all the brainpower that earned him his PhD to run the fuck away. At least Rick stuck around to help with the matter. Right? Right? I don't even know why I'm asking. I already know the damn answers. With Regina being stuck to fend off Mr. Rex, we must use our brains instead of our brass, as no amount of weaponry will take this big SOB down. The only way to win this fight is by running in circles around the destroyed helicopter. Yep. That's it. Kind of a letdown if you ask me. Once enough time has passed, Rick pops up out of nowhere to call out to Regina. They both manage to escape by taking an elevator down. During the elevator ride, Rick takes the pessimistic route by saying they are screwed. Regina, on the other hand, finds hope in the deep, dark, stinky hole that they are in. But before they can come up with a game plan, the elevator shits the bed, leaving them in an underground passage. Here we are greeted once again by the most vicious and deadly dinosaur of them all. You may want to shield your eyes, as there is no going back from here. Regina is ambushed by a bunch of Compsognathus. While running for her life, Regina enters a small room to discover the body of a scientist surrounded by these scary monsters. By his body is a memo and the CO keycard. The memo gives hope in this shit situation, as it confirms that there is a hovercraft somewhere in the third floor basement. When she catches up with Rick, the two of them take an elevator up where she brings him up to speed on how they will escape.
So, I think I found a way out of here.
Right on, girl. Let's hear it.
So, you guys gonna talk about the escape plan? Anyone? Hello? Well, this is awkward. This elevator leads them all the way back to the big-ass elevator they took down with Tom. And like clockwork, this elevator too runs into its fair share of problems due to the facility's power going out. But in that darkness, a light burns through. That light being Gale's angry, constipated voice. Apparently, he too is on the third floor basement, and he tasks them with restoring the floor's power while he goes after Cuck. A fuse box by the elevator will allow them to complete their task, but one of their batteries is shaped like my...
Our daddy taught us not to be ashamed of our dicks, Especially since they're such good size and all.
Yeah, I see that. Your daddy gave you good advice.
It gets bigger when I pull on it. Sometimes, I pull on it so hard, I rip the skin.
Well, my daddy taught me a few things too, like how not to rip the skin by using someone else's mouth instead of your own hands.
Will you show me?
I'd be right happy to.
So we must find another to replace it. That replacement being in the backup generator fuse box in the next room. With the facility now powered up, Rick goes right back to doing what he does best, which is working on the security system, while Regina does everything else. And who said chivalry was dead? Inside the control room that Rick now occupies are 2 crane keycards and a memo from someone named Alan. Alan? Where have I heard that name before? Alan. Going through the other door in the room takes Regina to weapon storage, and here is where we are met with the Therizinosaurus. These were herbivores in actuality, but due to the devs not knowing or researching this fact, they pretty much made these be an amped up version of the raptors. And they do a lot more damage, thanks to their long sharp claws. But Regina doesn't have to worry about those just yet, as one of these dinosaurs destroys some chains holding up a metal container. This is yet another danger event, and if you fuck it up, well, I'll just show you.
Fit nicely into a sandwich.
Would you get out of here, Barry? Succeeding the event has Regina avoiding her flattening, but she still must face off against the dinosaurs. And these are no joke. Aside from them having more health than your average raptor, they deal out more damage and are capable of insta-killing Regina if she is knocked down to the ground and doesn't get up quickly enough. And because of all these factors, plus the super tight quarters you end up fighting them in, it's best to use your strongest equipment to get them out of the way as fast as possible. Speaking of equipment, I think now is the best time to talk about the game's combat mechanics, as we've encountered all the dinosaurs, besides a reskin, and have obtained all weapons. Dino Crisis, being made by the same people behind Resident Evil, has some similar qualities when it comes to the game's combat. But truthfully, I don't believe this is just Resident Evil with dinosaurs, as it has a lot of features that belong only to this game series, and ones that will later be adapted to Resident Evil. Like that game, Regina is unable to move and shoot at the same time. But something they added for this series only is her ability to aim and move, which is extremely helpful due to the enemies not being slow as shit. She also has the ability to do a 180-degree quick turn to get out of sticky situations. Resident Evil 3 would have this function for Jill to use, but Dino Crisis beat that game out to release by a few months. Beyond how she controls, her arsenal also is a bit different than RE's, but sadly I think it's a bit limited, as there are only 3 weapons for her to use. Those being her trusty Glock 34, the Franke PA-3 shotgun, and the 40mm Heckler & Koch grenade pistol. You see that Glock in Regina's hand? Well, throw that shit in the trash, cause it pretty much does fuck all to the serious dinosaurs. The weapons you'll truly rely on are the shotgun and grenade launcher, as these actually do decent damage to all enemies. The problem is that ammo is quite limited with these, but the introduction of different ammo types helps relieve some of the issues, especially with the shotgun. Besides it using the obvious shotgun shells, it also gets slag shells, which I'm sure was a translation error, as there is a real-world ammunition called slugs. Going beyond the typical shotgun ammo, it also has the ability to shoot darts. The darts themselves have 4 different variants, with 3 of them being different strengths of anesthetic that will put the dinosaur it's attached to sleep. Obviously, they don't sleep forever, and the time it takes to wake up depends on the strength of the anesthetic used. The 4th dart type is the best ammo type in the game, it being the poison dart. Using one of these on any type of dinosaur, besides the T-Rex, will result in its near immediate death. These being the strongest also makes them the rarest, but there are ways to get more, which I'll get into in a moment. The grenade launcher, as its name implies, launches explosive rounds towards an enemy. But there is also a second type of ammo that can be used for it, and they are called heat rounds, which I'm sure you can surmise what their purpose is. This weapon and its ammo are great to use against all foes, besides the Compsognathus, but them being that good also makes them hard to come by. So you'll find yourself flipping back and forth between the shotgun and the grenade launcher to keep yourself from running out of ammo. Another issue is that it requires a reload after each shot, and the reload time is quite painful if you're near an enemy. But this is where an element from RE2 comes into play, and that is the addition of weapon parts. Each weapon in this game has parts that can be added to increase its lethality. You remember that Glock 34 I had you throw away a bit ago? Well, grab it out of the trash for a second, as I must go over its two attachments. The first one you'll come across are the pistol sights, which increase the chances of you scoring a critical hit on an enemy. Critical hits will knock down the foe that you score it on, which gives you precious time to either escape or reposition yourself. But it being up to chance makes it kinda useless in most situations. The Glock's second attachment, the handgun slides, changes the Glock 34 to the Glock 35. This gives it the ability to fire the 40 Smith & Wesson bullets, which are stronger than the base 9mm rounds that the base Glock can fire. The problem is that these attachments don't really solve the Glock's issue of not dealing with threats quickly enough. The only scenario where it will prove useful is when you have a shutter standing between you and an enemy, as you can mag dump into them without worry. Alright, you can throw it back in the trash. Now onto the real weapons. The Franchi PA3 shotgun on its own is an already reliable weapon that is capable of bringing down any of the Raptor-sized threats with ease. Once the halls of the facility start filling up with multiple threats at once, it could use a bit of help, and that's where its two attachments come into play. After finding the shotgun parts, the Franchi PA3 turns into the extremely recognizable Franchi Spas 12 shotgun. This ups the damage tremendously, but the downside of its heightened damage is its heightened recoil. Regina will visibly struggle with this, which will also increase the time it takes between shots. Thankfully, there is a way to circumvent this issue, and that's with the shotgun stock attachment. When this is attached to the Spas, the recoil will pretty much be non-existent, allowing Regina to fire it much quicker. It also gives the Spas its iconic look, which is a nice treat. The third and final weapon, the Heckler & Koch grenade launcher, as I mentioned a second ago, has an absurd reload time, which leaves Regina in a really bad spot if there's more than one enemy nearby. And while it may have the damage to even it out, we aren't here to be even with these prehistoric pricks. Unlike the other two weapons that Regina has access to, the grenade launcher only gets one attachment, and they are the GG parts. Yes, the GG stands for grenade gun, but I'm still calling it a grenade launcher, goddammit. Attaching these to the launcher gives it the ability to fire off 3 rounds before reloading. This turns the weapon into a room clearer, with the only issue being that the grenade rounds are a rare commodity. But when you decide to use it, you'll know that any enemy you come across stands absolutely no chance against you. But if they somehow do, then Regina has an abundant amount of healing items at her disposal. And this is where Dino Crisis really differentiates itself from the Resident Evil series. At the time of this game's release, the RE series allowed you to mix 3 different types of herbs together to heal your character, with there being a healing spray in there as well. But that was it when it came to how you healed your character. Dino Crisis, on the other hand, has a ton of different ways to do so, as they implemented an item mix feature that allows you to combine different healing items together to increase their quality and quantity. A good majority of these consist of different level med packs that heal for different amounts, and these range from small, medium, and large. Depending on how you mix them, they also have plus variants that are stronger than their regular versions. Besides those, there is an item called the Hemostat, that's only use is to stop the bleeding status effect that, in all honesty, only happened to me once in my many playthroughs for this video. There are also 4 specialized items that can be thrown into the mix instead of combining 2 already created healing items. There is the Multiplier, the Intensifier, the Anesthetic Aid, and recovery aid. The multiplier and intensifier are self-explanatory. The multiplier creates multiple of an item it's mixed with, while the intensifier greatly increases the intensity of whatever item it's combined with. As for the two aid items, they act as an intensifier if used correctly. The recovery aid, if used on a healing item, greatly increases said item's potency. The anesthetic aid does the same thing if used on a tranquilizer dart. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. The mixing screen is also where the tranquilizer darts can be made, and like I said when I covered the shotgun's ammo, these two have their different intensities, so using the anesthetic aid on one of these will greatly boost its level. But if you for whatever reason decide to switch the two's purpose by either using the recovery aid on a dart or the anesthetic aid on a healing item, then they will only boost the item's intensity by a small amount. Regardless of what items are combined, when enough intensity is added to an item, it will either become a larger version of itself or gain a plus onto it. And when the item has two pluses, the next time its intensity increases, it will become a larger version of the item. Eventually, these upgraded items cap out with their strongest versions. For the healing items, it's the Resurrection Kit. When held, the item will automatically be used when Regina's health hits 0. It will then bring her back to full health and place her outside the room she died in. Without the item in hand, you'd get the obvious game over screen. And if you decide you want to heal instead of accepting death's embrace, then it can be used as a large med pack, which I also forgot to mention has the ability to stop the bleeding status effect as well as fully healing Regina. The strongest tranquilizer dart is the poison dart, which I've already gone over with to you. But the way to craft these beautiful insta-killing machines is by combining one of those resurrection kits with a large anesthetic dart. But due to how strong they are, you only get a single dart every time you do this process. So just like the kits that are used to make them, they are only to be used in dire situations. This mixing mechanic is extremely in-depth, and my explanation doesn't really do it justice. So I'd recommend testing it out yourself, or by looking at a guide to see all the possibilities. I just wish you were able to craft more ammo variants like you'd be able to do in the upcoming Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. If both of those games combine their ammo crafting and medical mixing mechanics, it would have been beautiful. I think the mixing mechanic they had here would have been more exciting with ammo mixing, as shooting shit is more fun than healing yourself with varying levels of heals. Well, that was one hell of a sidetrack. I think now is the best time to return to the story. With the room clear of Dinosaurs, Regina goes through a roller shutter to the transport passageway. Sitting on the back of a truck are the CO area key and a third crane keycard. This key, along with the other two Regina obtained, can be used to operate the crane in the room where Regina first encountered the Dinosaurs. This happens to be yet another crane puzzle, and it acts the same way as the previous one, with us using cards to program the crane's movements. My feelings on this are unchanged, as I don't really like being forced to watch the crane's slow-ass movements while solving the puzzle, especially if a mistake is made. I think being able to skip some of the animations or speeding it up in some way would have been great, but I understand that it may not have been possible for the developers to do. But I digress. The quickest way to get past this puzzle requires 4 program movements. The first program card set is up 3, hook, left 2, down 1, and release. The second is up 3, right 2, hook, down 1, left 2, and release. The third is up 3, right 2, down 1, and hook. The final one is release, right 2, and hook. The reason we had to use the crane is due to some random-ass researcher dying behind a bunch of metal crates. On his body is the DDKW input disc, which surprisingly, we haven't come across the locked door yet. But the CO key we got alongside the crane's third key can be used in the carrying out room to unlock a door to a new section of the facility. Going through a couple of hallways and up a set of stairs takes Regina to the security pass room. At its entrance is this metal detector that has this nice effect where it highlights the weapon Regina is holding. Going through it sets off an alarm that must be deactivated by using a console in the same room. Sitting atop of it is the DDK-S input disk. Also in the room by a dead researcher is the B2 key chip 1 and a memo. In it, it goes over how the terminal by the now deceased researcher was used to make forgeries. So it's pretty much like the terminal we used in the office near the beginning of the game. But this one will have no use for a while, as it really only requires a certain individual's fingerprint and registration number. Going back out the door we came in, there is a ventilation duct that Regina can use her grappling hook to get up to. This passage takes her to the experiment room hallway, and I have a bone to pick with this fucking room. While working on any game that I make a video about for this channel, I play through it multiple times. This, I'm sure, isn't news to many of you, as it's really required to get a full grasp of how you feel about the game and its story. But during my first playthrough for this video, which was my first time playing this game in over 10 years, I for the life of me couldn't figure out where to go at this point. I seriously think I ran around for a full hour before discovering a shittily, yes, I'm using that as a word, placed item in this very hall. Going towards the closest room and scanning the wall to the left, we can see, or in my case, barely see, a keycard sitting in a little alcove. If you scan the wall at an unlucky time where the keycard happened to be showing only its side, you'd only see a small dark 3-pixel sized line. I mean, look at this fucking shit.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
I checked every section of the map available to me over and over and over again due to this fucking keycard. And when you grab it, the game has the audacity to try and jump scare us with this blue raptor.
Surprise, motherfucker!
It then throws us in a danger event that is pretty damn boring, as it involves Regina needing to stand up. Yeah. Anyway, these blue raptors are the strongest enemies you will come across in the game. Besides the T-Rex, of course. They have a lot of health, do a fuck ton of damage, and are somehow faster than the original raptors. When you see these things, use the grenade launcher to rid them as quick as possible, as it only takes a couple of attacks to kill Regina. Once that's done, don't forget to grab the level C keycard that the game halted you from picking up due to the cutscene. Going through the door across from where the keycard sat takes Regina to the stabilizer design room. Currently, the only things of use here are the DDKW code disk and a memo going over the steps and the items needed to activate the generator for the experiment, with it also mentioning a code that must be split into 2, with a 0 needing to be added into each one. Down the hall from here is the researcher restroom. That's what it's called. And no, it's not a shitter. This is where we get the most oddly placed and most likely cut cutscene in the entire game. Here, I'll play it for you in its entirety.
Gale!
Yeah, well, at least Kirk's running out of places to hide.
What an absolute masterpiece of a cutscene that in no way should have been cut from the game. Besides that gem of a cutscene, there really isn't much of import here. There is a puzzle that unlocks a door leading to a place that can already be reached, a bed, and a memo where more researchers talk shit about Dr. Cuck. And with us having met him, I can't blame a single one of these researchers. Heading all the way back to where the CO key was used, there is a rest station that has the DDKW lock in it. This puzzle works the same way as the DDKL lock, where the key numbers are attached to letters of the alphabet and then removed from the code. That gives us the password, Waterway. Through the door is the disembark room, which is one room away from the port, which is the group's escape. The problem is that the door is sealed shut, but luckily for us, we got a tech guy in our group, who happens to show up at the right moment. While he focuses on the door, a communication device starts beeping from a body in the room. The guy on the other end sounds distressed, saying he has the key to the port, but is being followed by a lizard. His words, not mine. and he'll be taking the big-ass elevator down to the basement's 3rd floor. Regina, being the paragon of paragonesses, finds humor in the researcher's plight, but Rick brings her back to reality by telling her that if the researcher gets eaten, then they're gonna have to fish it out of the dinosaur's stomach. Either that, or they'll have to wait for, well, you know.
Shit.
On her way out, the second B2 key chip sits on a nearby terminal, with it having the number 0392 on it, though its use will have to wait. When Regina reaches the carrying out room, she is just in time to hear the researchers getting killed over an intercom. And when the elevator reaches her floor, the metal shutters open to reveal the lizard that the researcher was talking about. It was the T-Rex, and it now sets its sights on Regina. But the thing manages to destroy the floor's generator while attacking her, leading to it getting shocked and falling unconscious.
Rick, what are you doing all the way over there?
With the generator destroyed, Regina must grab the gray battery that Rick placed into the fuse box when they first arrived at this floor, and place it in the fuse box where she first found it. After shifting them into their right spots, the facility is powered up once again, allowing Regina to open the elevator shutter where the researchers were killed. Surprisingly, their bodies are mostly intact, with 2 of them holding important items, those being the port key card and the DDK-D input disc. Back at the disembark room, Regina tosses the port key to Rick, which allows them to unlock the door leading to the port. However, there is another thing standing in their way. But this time, it's something unnatural. The 2 call it a vortex, and surmise that it's something that was caused by the 3rd energy experiment. Rick once again heads back to the terminal he was using to find any information on it, while tasking Regina with finding more physical information on it. This once again means that she'll be risking life and limb while he sits in his comfy chair looking at funny videos on the internet. This is definitely one of my top jump scares of all time, only being overshadowed by the jump scare Pop-Tart in Silent Hill Revelations. My dude's got taste. At her feet is the DDK-S code disc, and it, alongside the B2 key cards, will be used back in the security pass room. Inserting the 2 B2 chip keys into a terminal and entering the code 0392, we are dragged into another magnetic pattern puzzle. But instead of there being 1 pattern, there are 2 this time, and with different colors. We are also able to move each color over to the other side, but you'd only want to move the blue over to where the red is, as a pattern requires there to be no color on the left, and both on the right, with all blue being on top and red being on bottom. Solving this comes down to some trial and error, but I'm sure there are ways to solve it quickly. This process overwrites what was on the key cards so they can be used later. As for the DDK-S puzzle, it works a bit differently than any of the others we've come across so far, but it's pretty easy regardless. The code section has a ton of letters inside it, while the key has the numbers 2, 5, 6, 7, and 9. The way to solve this is by ignoring all the letters in the same row as the numbers. Doing so gives us the password stabilizer. The door takes Regina to parts storage, which also connects to the hall where the level C keycard was found. The laser shutter that's inside this hall can now be deactivated, allowing her to reach the stabilizer experiment room. Like many of the other experiment rooms, most of its uses will come later, but something that is needed now is the DDK-D code disc that's sitting in the center of the room. This, alongside its input disc, is to be used in the parts storage hallway DDK-D lock. This will be the final one of the game, and it's a lot different compared to the ones we've completed before. The code now consists of numbers, while the key has 2 letters inside it, those letters being G and F. This puzzle works almost like the ones where we had to attach letters to numbers, but obviously it's been flipped, with the game trying to fool you with how the code's structured. To solve it, we simply need to look at each group of letters and attach a letter to it. So the 04 becomes a D, while the 15 becomes an O, and so on and so forth. The only numbers we need to ignore are the ones attached with the letters G and F, with those letters being 06 and 07. That leaves us with the password Dr. Kirk. You'd think that they'd have a more difficult password here due to this door leading to the experiment room. But I guess Dr. Kirk had to plaster his name somewhere due to his insane ego. But at least the next room makes up for this security blunder, as there are 2 doors that require separate keycards, which we so happen to have thanks to us overriding the B2 keycards. Regina is now inside the main generator room, but she currently has no way of activating it. Much to her luck though, the level B keycard is in the control room that unlocks the door to the power frequency room. But just like every other time she comes across a human that isn't a douche or part of her crew, there is an unconscious researcher sitting against the wall, dying. Sadly, Regina isn't willing to part with any of her healing items, so I guess the poor woman is doomed to die. Across from her is a memo that has Dr. Kirk's registration number in it, which is vital, so we'll just need to remember the number. Sitting by the future corpse is an energy supply control puzzle that can supply power to the control room. This works just like the other one we did, so let's solve it quickly. The left pattern needs to be flipped to the left once. The middle pattern also needs to be flipped to the left once, and the right pattern needs to be flipped to the right once. With power restored, Regina can once again try to power up the generator. This, once again, leads nowhere due to it requiring Dr. Cuck's keycard. Regina, to her credit, takes this pretty well. But suddenly, a lone gunshot rings out from the power frequency room. Walking through the door, Regina discovers that the researcher had their death sped up. On her person... Wait, is that still the term if they're dead? Huh, I truly have never thought about that. Anyway, on the meat puppet is a note with the number 1281 on it. This is to be used back in the stability experiment room to obtain shotgun parts. On a panel by the deceased researcher is a bloody handprint. Regina makes note that its fingerprints are seen clearly. This is the game telling us to use our fingerprint collecting device. Going deeper into the room, Regina spots someone running through the hall's door. She quickly follows, but is caught off guard by Dr. Cuck pointing a gun right at her head. Instead of instantly painting the sleek, clean walls with her brains, Cuck decides to talk down to her about his
ultimate energy source.
Regina snaps back by telling him it will be just another weapon to be misused. And right before the doctor sends us to the credits scene, Gale shoots the gun right out of his hands. With the doctor now their prisoner once again, Gale and Regina demand an explanation. This is when we are told that the experiment that supposedly killed him 3 years ago was him assessing how third energy could affect time. The bomb is then dropped when he tells the two that the area affected by this experiment was exchanged with another from a different time. In layman's terms, it's time travel. The very grounded use of time travel. Kirk replicated the experiment this very evening, with it bringing forth dinosaurs from 65 million years in the past. Regina isn't impressed, due to the many lives that were lost from the experiments. But Gale cuts their arguing short by asking for a way to rid their escape route of the vortex. Kirk tells them that the only way to do that is by activating the generator and letting its third energy levels overload. The problem that stems from that is that if they don't quickly stop the overload, then the entire facility and its surroundings will be shifted to another time. Regina, who has already tried activating the generator, brings up her failed attempt, to which Dr. Kirk laughs in her face, telling her that she needs the initializer and stabilizer to proceed. He points her to the basement's 3rd floor and begrudgingly hands her his level A keycard. This is when Rick decides to show up, and he has his own idea on how to get both devices. Rick thinks it's too dangerous to go to the 3rd floor, due to the many dinosaurs that are down there, handing Regina the draft plans for the devices so she can assemble them nearby. This is when both Rick and Gale start making assumptions about Regina. Gale assumes she lacks the technical know-how on how to assemble both devices, while Rick assumes that she wouldn't make it out of the basement's 3rd floor alive. Now, I don't know where these two jackasses have been for most of this shit show, but Regina has been able to adapt to any situation that's been thrown her way. So, they can it. Oh, and this leads to yet another choice, with Rick's going first, resulting in him handing Regina the planning disk that is required to use the various terminals throughout the facility. But before we head back out there, we can head into Kirk's lab where him and Gale are spending some quality time together. On his desk lies an old document with his signature on it. Inside, we discover that third energy was always meant to be a weapon, with the government's hands being all over it. Now, if you didn't get his print from the bloodied panel a few rooms back, you can scan them here, which is a really nice touch. Our first step in our quest to assemble the stabilizer and initializer is the part storage room. And truth be told, this room might house the most difficult puzzle in the game. In the center of the room is a terminal that requires a 6-digit password to use, with the numbers 1 through 9 being placed in an odd fashion. Moving the cursor over each number presents us with a different beep sound like this. Searching the room, Regina moves over a cabinet that reveals a wiretapping device that managed to record the conversation between two researchers. In it, one enters the correct code into the terminal, with us hearing the beeping sounds. Now, I shit you not, this is all we get in terms of how to solve this puzzle. We must listen to those beeps in the recording and recreate them on the terminal in order to find the password. This isn't so bad if you use your phone to record the sounds like I did, but I cannot imagine the annoying amount of times people had to go back and forth between the terminal and device to complete this puzzle. I truly sympathize. Also, the correct order for the code is 367204, and upon its entry, 2 lockers open, revealing 2 core parts. This would also be a great time to remember the code you just entered, as we aren't done with it just yet. Going back to the stabilizer design room, we finally get context of the memo we read in this room a little while back. On the other side of the room are 2 terminals that house more device parts. One terminal needs half of the code we just used back at part storage, while the other needs the other half. But don't forget to add the 0 at the start of each code. Doing so gives us 3 project parts, with the 4th and final project part being back in the stabilizer experiment room. There isn't any flashy way to retrieve this, as all we gotta do is insert the planning disk. With that, all pieces to both devices have been obtained. Now all we have to do is put the parts together, and it wouldn't be Dino Crisis if they didn't force a puzzle down our throats to do so. A terminal in the same room allows us to assemble both the initializer and stabilizer, with a lone part being displayed on the screen. But before we know it, a second piece comes flying in, with us needing to rotate the first piece so they fit in the place. This is pretty stupid, but it gets even worse when a third piece flies in and you realize that the parts now rotate a little slower. If at any point you fail to fit the pieces together, then you must restart. This is more irritating than difficult, as I feel they just threw this puzzle to pad out gameplay. As with all of Gale's choices, if you have enough ammo and healing items, then they are simpler to complete when compared to Rick's, and this one is no different. Getting back to the 3rd floor basement is an easy task, with the only butt-puckering part involving Regina walking by the still unconscious T-Rex. Besides that, the paths are littered with your usual suspects of raptors and Therizinosaurus. Like I said, if you're well equipped, then this will be a breeze to get through. And once you do, both the stabilizer and initializer are sitting right next to one another, and are already put together. Beyond that, the routes conclude the same way, with us having to head back to the generator, but first making a pit stop at the security pass room to update the ID card. Using Kirk's fingerprint on the terminal and entering in his registration number allows us to do so. With it updated, we can now begin the process of activating the third energy generator by using the ID on the terminal in the control room. Now that the system is ready, we must place both the initializer and stabilizer in their respective slots and use both of their terminals. Shortly after starting the generator, it begins to overload. Back in Kirk's library room, Gale pushes the Doctor out of harm's way from a collapsing ceiling. What does Gale get from Kirk for such a heroic act? A maniacal laugh and being called pathetic. See? This is why I call him Cuck. Before Kirk walks off to go doing more evil shit, Gale throws a tracker onto his lab coat. And by the time Regina arrives, Cuck is already gone. Gale hands Regina the transmitter, and the two manage to get his chunky square body back to Rick, who is talking dirty to the terminal he is manning.
Just a little more. Looking good.
They update him on Cuck's whereabouts, which pisses him off so much that he has to go back to the terminal to blow off whatever he has to blow off. And since Regina activated the generator, their escape route is clear. But before they go down that path, we are given one final choice. But before we get to that, I completely forgot to talk about the game's controls and graphics due to my shitty video structuring, and I'm way too lazy to try and shove this segment anywhere else. So yeah. Like Resident Evil, Dino Crisis uses tank controls. If you're watching this video, then I'm sure you've heard that term and know it quite well. If not, please refer to one of my other shitty videos to find out what they are. But a spoiler for the answer is that your character moves like an old style tank. A change up from those games is how the camera works here. In both RE1 and 2, the camera was fixed at specific angles, mainly due to how those games use pre-rendered backgrounds, which, as their name implies, are backgrounds that are rendered before they are displayed. The way this works is that the developers would create a 3D background and take snapshots of them, which creates a highly detailed static image. Your character, along with items and enemies, are then overlaid on top of these backgrounds. These are almost always used with the camera type I mentioned a second ago, which are known as fixed camera angles. And once your character reaches the end of the screen, it will quickly switch over to another fixed camera to get your character into view. Dino Crisis only uses the fixed cameras, and it's done so in a slightly different way. While the camera in Dino Crisis may be fixed, it is given more freedom to follow Regina around than the ones used in Resident Evil. This is mainly due to the developers going with fully 3D environments, instead of the tried and true pre-rendered ones. And while there are many spots where the camera will shift like they do in RE, you'll find plenty of locations where the camera will follow Regina around dynamically, which is a really nice and necessary touch due to the enemies in this game being extremely agile. The downside of the fully 3D environments is that they have aged a lot more than the pre-rendered ones that were used in Resident Evil. A side-by-side comparison shows just how much personality and detail was lost in the environments of Dino Crisis due to the switch to 3D. I don't like bashing games that much, but holy shit do the environments in this game get old fast. Honestly, I was never a fan of the white and gray colored Umbrella Lab sections that close out most Resident Evil games, as the places that usually lead up to them are varied and pleasing to look at. I just get tired of seeing bland, colorless locations, as they become extremely boring to traverse and look at. The issue here is that Dino Crisis has a metric ton of these, with there being no real changes at any point. I think if they stuck with pre-rendered backgrounds, then they could have done some sort of jungle environment to mix things up a bit with the indoor lab sections. I know Shinji Mikami said he wasn't happy with how these turned out, leading to them being scrapped. But I think he was just being a perfectionist. Something else that hurts the experience is the lack of enemy variety, as it boils down to small-sized raptor, mid-sized raptor, mid-sized raptor with big claws, blue raptor, flying raptor, and big-ass raptor. There really is no major enemy change-up like the ones in Resident Evil. And while the zombies are not varied by any means, at least we get enemies that act differently than them, with the lickers and hunters to name a few. The pteranodons are the outlier to the group, but they zoom around you so quickly and are hard to hit with all the weapons that it's best to not waste time or ammo on them and to just run away. As I mentioned earlier, another thing that lacks variety is your weaponry. So we are just left with so many aspects to this game that lack any sort of variation, leading to it feeling a bit stale. One of the things that makes games so enjoyable is discovering new and exciting features, like new weapons that act differently than the ones you already have, new enemies that force you to change up your playstyle, and new locations that give you something to look at. Dino Crisis lacks in all these fronts, which really bogs down the experience. And it's not that I hate this game by any discernible means, it's just that it all feels very half-baked, which hurts to say, as I love this game still, and looked back on it fondly before returning to it. Honestly, I don't know if it's just me here or not, so if you have any input about this, I'd love to hear it. On a positive note, that concludes my bitching, so let's finish this story out. Rick and Gale argue once more about what should be done next. Rick says he has a conscience, and vows to take Gale back alive. But Gale isn't fond of living, I guess, as he refuses, telling Regina and Rick to leave without him while he goes after Kirk. Rick tries to remind Gale about what's going to happen to the facility with the third energy generator overloading, but Gale persists, asking for 30 minutes, which isn't long in most situations, but in this one, it's a lifetime. Rick then turns to Regina and demands something to be done, and we can either go with his idea to get the fuck out of here while we still can, or Gale's idea of sticking with the mission and going after Kirk. Since Rick has the right idea, and we've stuck with his from the very beginning, I think it's only fitting to continue along that path. But don't worry, we will see Gale's right after. Both Rick and Regina have had enough of Gale's bullshit, and decide to knock his dumbass out to drag him to the escape vehicle. But I think Rick goes a little too far by calling Gale a GI joke. But I guess it's only right due to him having to carry Gale's blocky ass. At the escape hovercraft, Rick gives us the bad news right away, telling Regina that needs fuel and repairs before they can leave. Regina opts to take care of the fuel problem, so Rick hands her an empty energy tank which requires nuclear energy as fuel. I don't know how that works exactly, but if Regina ends up getting radiation poisoning from this bullshit, then she's gonna haunt Rick for the rest of his life. Going back a few rooms takes Regina to the port, where the stable man-made nuclear fuel known as nucleum can be poured into the tank. She heads back to Rick and tosses it right to him. And they are lucky she has a good arm and Rick was able to catch it, as it completely missing or falling out of Rick's hands and into the water would have been a really shitty way to go out. Unfortunately, Regina's job isn't done yet, as a T-Rex makes itself known right outside. She heads back to the port to deal with it while Rick prepares the hovercraft. Once there, the T-Rex blasts through a giant steel door and begins chasing Regina. This is the game's final boss, and to be honest, it's way too easy. We simply have to run around the port, which is a giant circle, and shoot the T-Rex when the game instructs us to do so. And that's it. It's what we had to do at the helicopter crash, with one tiny difference thrown in. Instead of what they did here, they really should have gone all out for this encounter, making you feel almost powerless against a towering dinosaur. But instead, they made it out to be a gimmick fight. And just 35 seconds after the fight started, it ends, with Rick firing a rocket right at a couple of fuel silos the T-Rex is standing by. This causes even more destruction, leading to the generator's complete meltdown. Amid all the destruction, somehow the T-Rex didn't die, and it begins its aquatic pursuit of the group in their hovercraft. But like the fight itself, it's short-lived, as a giant orb of light consumes the son of a bitch.
Get your ass back here!
The group narrowly escapes the light, and when it's gone, we see that the third energy generator's overload took a giant part of the facility somewhere else in time. Where exactly? Who the fuck knows, but at least we don't have to deal with Kirk anymore, and that's a win to me. After riding off into the sunrise, we end right where we began, with checking our emails. These are just Regina summarizing where Cuck and her squad mates are at currently, with Cuck literally being lost to time, Gale recovering at a medical facility, Rick analyzing data they retrieved from the facility, and Regina being ready for her next mission.
As for myself, I'm ready to begin my next assignment.
Oh, and Tom is dead and Cooper's whereabouts are unknown to them. But to us, he is probably a dino dump somewhere 240 million years ago. All in all, a happy ending. Now, let's rewind a bit. Siding with Gale, Regina allows him to pursue Kirk. Just very slowly. Rick asks why she allowed it, and she says it's because she finally understands that Gale is a professional, putting the mission above all else. This seemingly works for Rick, who falls in line just like Regina, doing his part to capture Kirk. With Gale being injured, you'd think that he'd have taken forever to reach the doctor, but apparently not, as he is all the way back at the stabilizer experiment room. When Regina arrives, Gale is holding Kirk at gunpoint. But this soldier has seen his last mission. He hands Regina a disc that holds information about how to turn third energy into a weapon, and tells her that its delivery is their true mission. This revelation of their true goal makes Cuck burst into a maniacal laugh. But Regina is still taken aback by it, and still thinks that Kirk is their objective. But Kirk tears down that falsehood, that the US government wants the third energy and its weapon capabilities all to themselves, with Gale even backing up that claim, saying that the government knew beforehand that Kirk was working on a weapon. The writing was on the wall from the very beginning, with their promise of giving him political asylum, as well as the country's notoriety for creating secret weapons themselves. Kirk is just a bonus to them, and him being taken along with the facility's destruction would allow them to exploit third energy. Regina asks why both she and Rick weren't told, and Gale assumes it's because the power at B knew they were too clean to be trusted. And the reason why he didn't say anything is because he didn't want either of them to be put in any danger. Kirk cuts the explanation short by demanding they leave, but when Regina tries to get Gale to grab her shoulder, he collapses to the floor and quietly passes away. Cuck, being Cuck, sees this as a moment to insult Gale for dying for nothing, but thankfully Regina shuts him up with a left hook to the mouth.
Let's go.
When only Regina and Kirk arrive, Rick is actually upset to hear of Gale's passing, and takes Kirk to the escape vehicle. Going through the port, Regina comes across an already dead T-Rex. I truly have no idea what happened here, but there's no time to think about it now, as the escape vehicle awaits. During their extremely silent and uncomfortable ride out of the facility, a crash is heard behind them, and when they turn to look, they see a T-Rex chasing after them. Now, Rick refers to it as the same one as before, so I don't know if the one we saw a second ago was another T-Rex, or if it was this one feigning death. But regardless, the fucker's gotta die. This boss fight is obviously different from Rick's path, as there is no real room to dodge its attacks. But sadly, it is still too easy for a final boss. It boils down to standing still and firing at the T-Rex when it gets close and opens its mouth. 20 seconds later, it ends, with Rick firing the rocket that's atop the hovercraft into some sort of nuclear fuel source. The poor T-Rex gets annihilated. Or so we thought, as the fucker appears to be a star swimmer and diver, as it managed to outswim the explosion and dive under the water to ambush the group. But luck is on their side, as some plastic explosive appears out of nowhere for Regina to toss right into the T-Rex's mouth. And thankfully, we get a beautiful one-liner from Regina to cap off this game's ending.
End of the line for you, handsome. You're extinct!
Poor Gale. Died for Cuck and isn't able to see this beautiful sunrise. At the email section, Regina goes over how Cuck is already in talks with the military to develop weaponry. and that Gale died so that the mission could succeed. But what if I told you that we can save Gale and capture Kirk in an ending? For that, we will need to rewind once more. To get this ending, we will need to side with Rick, which results in us knocking Gale out. With him out of the way, we can use the tracker he gave us to locate Kirk, who happens to be at the underground heliport, preparing to escape. Regina sneaks up on him, but loses the element of surprise, thanks to Rick radioing in to see what is taking her so long. But Regina swiftly kicks Kirk in the head, knocking him unconscious. She tells Rick that there is a helicopter where she is at, and that they can use it to escape. He and Gale then head to the passageway that leads to the heliport, with Regina meeting up with them on the other side. But Rick and Gale aren't alone, as the T-Rex is right behind them. They hop on the freight mover that Regina used to reach them, with the T-Rex quickly following behind. This fight is similar to the previous one, with the obvious difference being that they aren't in water. All you have to do is fire at the T-Rex when it gets close and opens its mouth. Half a minute later, and it's over. But they aren't out of the woods or underground heliport yet, as once they're in the air, the T-Rex follows them up the long shaft. That's when Rick releases what I'm assuming to be a guided bomb right by poor Rexy, with them narrowly escaping its comically sized explosion, with Gale and Kirk in tow. And just like Resident Evil before it, they fly off into the sunrise. I'm not gonna finish it. The end.
Suspect is in custody. Call the prison and let him know he's coming home. Over.
Just like Resident Evil, there are multiple alterations to each ending depending on what you chose, but these three are the major ones. In conclusion, I kinda have mixed feelings about this game. Before revisiting it, I looked back on it fondly, but returning to it, I've noticed a ton of issues. The lack of enemy and weapon variety, the extreme lack of environmental variety, and its quick and easy boss fights. These issues really bring down the experience, and made the multiple playthroughs a bit of a slog. Though it's not without any redeeming qualities. The characters overall are great, especially when compared to RE1's cast. They each have a personality. Rick is the level-headed and jokester of the group.
Maybe this has been a wild night of partying for the guards.
Gale is the serious and stoic leader.
I have a little unfinished business to take care of.
And Regina is a mix of the twos, with her throwing out a lot of sarcasm in the face of danger, which I really like.
That's disgusting.
Dr. Kirk is also a fun character. He really is an evil douchebag, with you experiencing it firsthand when you meet him. They really pulled off the narcissistic genius character with Kirk, and you'll either love him, hate him, or I guess both if you find humor in his extremely over-the-top dialogue.
They want the third energy. They want this weapon all to themselves.
Surprisingly, the T-Rex also has a tiny bit of personality, with it seemingly carrying a grudge towards Regina and co. throughout the game, as it goes out of its way to try and kill them. Another thing I enjoyed were the puzzles. If you've seen any of my Resident Evil videos, then you know how much I hate the reliance on box-moving puzzles. Between REs 1 and 3, there are a shitload of these scattered throughout, and they're pretty much there to pad out for time. While that can be said about some of the puzzles in Dino Crisis, I applaud their use of different puzzle types strewn throughout the experience, with my favorite being the sound puzzle in Rick's third energy generator scenario. Now, I get that this was meant to be a different type of horror experience known as panic horror, but after the first Raptor and T-Rex encounter, it loses most of its scare and panic factors quite fast, thanks to them supplying you with enough shotgun shells and grenade rounds to single-handedly make the dinosaurs extinct. I also get that this was their first attempt at it, but if you know anything about this series, then you know that this would be their last go at making a panic horror dinosaur experience, as they pull a huge 180 with the second game in the series. but that's a conversation for another time. Truthfully, I still love this game to death, be it from nostalgia or just the appreciation that the devs tried something new instead of relying on what they were known for. There were so many ways that they could have made this a better experience, sure, but maybe then it wouldn't be the Dino Crisis we all know, love, and wish to be remade. Honestly, I'm not smart enough to figure this all out, but just know that this game, like I'm sure for many of you, holds a very special place in my heart. But we aren't done with the video yet, as there are unlockable modes and outfits to go over, as well as going over the game's audio. So up first are the outfits. Besides the outfit she starts with, Regina is given access to 3 other outfits that can be switched out when loading a save. The first is her army type uniform, and I use that term lightly, as I think those short shorts are non-regulation. Also a part of the outfit is an olive green shirt, dog tags, and a green bandana. Regina's hair is also cut a bit shorter than her standard outfits. Her second outfit is called Battle Type, and honestly, I don't know what to make of it. She wears a skin-tight suit with a burgundy tank top with one strap missing. On her lower half, she is wearing thigh-high boots that attach to her tank top, along with some extremely short shorts. A nice addition to the outfit is that her eye color changes from her standard brown to blue. The third and final outfit is the one that has the most changes. It's called Ancient Type, and she sports a jaguar bodysuit, a necklace with skulls on it, armbands, brown shoes, and some face paint. This outfit also changes her eye color to green, and while wearing it, it changes the look of all her weapons and their attachments. Her Glock 34 is a bone attached to a stick by some leather, and attaching the scope to it puts a poor frog right on the top of it. The Glock 35 is pretty much the same thing, with the only difference being whatever this is. I don't know what it is, but I'm guessing it's a small snake. But I could be wrong. Attaching the scope to this just places the poor frog right back on top of the weapon. The Franke PA3 becomes a long bone attached to a stick with some leather wrapped around it. Adding the stock to it changes the leather to a blue snake. The same can be said about the Franke Spas 12, with the blue snake being added when the stock is on it. The final and most absurd change, which is hard to believe, is for the Heckler & Koch grenade pistol, as this outfit turns the entire weapon into a giant ass fish, and adding the custom parts to it changes the color of the fish from brown to blue. With the outfits out of the way, let's now move over to the game's 2 extra modes. The first is called Operation Wipeout. This mode is unlocked after beating the game once on the PlayStation version, and is unlocked from the start on the PC and Dreamcast. The mode consists of 3 different time levels of varying difficulty. The first level places Regina in the first floor basement, with the task of killing 10 velociraptors and returning to the starting point in under 5 minutes. The second level is the second floor basement, where 5 blue raptors and 1 regular raptor must be killed with Regina returning to the starting point before 4 minutes are up. The third and final level is the basement's 3rd floor, and since this is the last level, it is the most difficult, where 7 Therizinosaurus must be killed in 3 minutes. On each level, Regina's equipment changes, but the trend of each one is that her equipment is very limited, forcing you to use every weapon and ammo type to make it out alive. Sadly, completing these doesn't unlock anything for the main game, which is extremely disappointing as the mode just comes down to a personal speedrun mode. The second mode is Arrange Mode. This isn't really a new mode, as it just changes the version of the game. At the start of this video, I mentioned that I'm playing the GOG version, which is the original Japanese version, with its items and codes being different than the American version. Arrange Mode is the American version, so if you played this on the PS1 in the States, then this is the version you played. There aren't any huge differences between the two, but if you want to mix things up a bit with some item placement and code changes, then this is a nice addition. Besides these, there are also extra difficulties for the main game, with it going from easy to very hard. These mainly affect your starting equipment, with the exception being the easy mode, where Regina is given double the health. And that's all the extras we have here. Kind of on the minimal side honestly, which is disappointing, but it's better than nothing, I guess. Alright, let's move on to the game's audio. The Dino Crisis soundtrack was worked on by 4 composers. They were Sayaka Fujita, Akari Kaida Groves, Suya Nishigaki, and Makoto Tomozawa. And I'm really sorry I butchered those names. The role of lead composer was given to Sayaka Fujita, which must have been quite the undertaking, as this would be her very first soundtrack to compose for. As for the composers that worked under her, they were all Capcom veterans by this point. Akari Kaida Groves joined the company in 1995, with her composing for multiple projects before this one, with the standouts being Resident Evil, Street Fighter Alpha, and Breath of Fire 3, with her involvement in Breath of Fire 3 being quite extensive, as she not only helped compose its soundtrack, but she also provided her vocals for the track Here Again. After her work on Dino Crisis, she would remain with Capcom for a few more years, working on titles like Onimusha 3 Demon Siege and a handful of Mega Man titles. In 2005, she would depart the company and become a freelancer, but funnily enough, she would be hired by Capcom to continue to work on Mega Man titles for many years to come. Suya Nishigaki joined Capcom in 1991, with him getting a name for himself by composing for a bunch of arcade cabinet titles, such as The Punisher and Saturday Night Slam Masters. And while those were notable, he would then work on much beloved titles like Super Street Fighter II Turbo and Street Fighter Alpha. Right before he got the composer position for Dino Crisis, he would help edit the music for Resident Evil 1 and help compose for Resident Evil 2. Afterwards, he would leave Capcom to work as a freelancer, with him composing for TV shows and commercials. However, even though he had left the company, his work on Super Street Fighter II Turbo would be remixed in the HD version released in 2008. Last but certainly not least is Makoto Tomozawa, who, if you watch my Resident Evil 2 or Resident Evil 1 remake videos, is someone you already know about. This mysterious man that for some reason only has pictures of the back of his head began working for Capcom in 1993, where he would work on a few Mega Man titles before landing a composer role in both RE1 and 2. After Dino Crisis, he would compose for the masterpiece that is known as the Resident Evil 1 remake. Leading up to his departure from the company in 2016, he would have the role of soundline manager for a couple of Street Fighter games, and return to the series where he got his start, with Mega Man 10 being his final composer role for the series. With this many great composers working on Dino Crisis, you'd think that the soundtrack would be absolutely amazing. Well, for me, it's not amazing. Just good. And I'm not saying it's bad by any measure, or that the composers did a bad job. It's just that when I go through a game like this in Resident Evil, there are usually some music tracks that I instantly get attached to right when I hear it in the game. For RE1, it's the save rooms, the mansion's first and second floor, and meeting Rebecca. For RE2, it's pretty much the whole damn soundtrack. But for Dino Crisis, I find the track I only truly enjoyed was the save room theme, Set You at Ease. Beyond that, I couldn't really say when and where the game had memorable tracks in it, as they usually just boil down to very short, stress-inducing pieces that loop like this track. Like I said, I don't like talking about someone's hard work in a negative light. And for all I know, this soundtrack could be loved by many, and I'm just in the minority with it. but it just doesn't click with me like the ones in the Resident Evil series. And while I can say that the tracks certainly have that panic horror feel to them, they just end up melding together with their overuse of bombastic drums and random string playing. If you like that sort of thing, then this game has it in spades. I just wish there was a more diversified soundtrack like the ones in Resident Evil and Silent Hill. Here, it's 98% shit your pants crazy and 2% calm. So much like the scares of the game, these two lose most of their scare factor after you've heard one of the many familiar sounding horror tracks enough times. But I really want to reiterate that this is just my opinion on the soundtrack, and while I may be a bit critical about it, that doesn't mean it's bad, and the soundtrack is well put together. It's just not for me. But if I'm missing something here, then please let me know in the comments. Something that I liked a lot more was the voice acting, as most of it is pretty well done, even for the minor characters. And just like my other videos, I'll go over the lesser characters first, with the main characters coming up at the end. So with that out of the way, let's go over our very first character, Tom, who is voiced by Robert Tinkler. Robert's career began in the early 1990s, and before his role in Dino Crisis, he had already lent his voice to many animated projects. A few of these being the voice of Max in The Adventures of Sam and Max Freelance Police, and Rubius in the horribly named, dubbed mid-90s version of Sailor Moon. While his role as Tom in Dino Crisis was small, he did a good job voicing him, which isn't surprising as he had a lot of experience beforehand. Afterwards, he went to do voice work in a literal ton of projects, with a few acting and directing roles strewn throughout. His recent works consist of voicing Woodstock in multiple Snoopy projects, Sparky Sparkeroni in multiple My Little Pony projects, and as a character named Delete in the animated TV series Cyber Chase. Looking at most of his works before and after shows that he is a really good voice actor, and from the looks of it, his career isn't slowing down, with his talent playing no small part in that fact.
That this country is somehow involved.
Dr. Edward Kirk's voice actor, Alex Karzis, began his career in the late 80s, and unlike Robert Tinkler's career in voice acting, Alex mainly stuck with live action roles in both film and TV shows, with him having a small role as a character Woody Reese in the Friday the 13th TV series, and a character named Nightmare in the TV series The Crow, Stairway to Heaven. Dino Crisis would be his very first voiceover role, and let me tell you, this guy chews up every scene he is in. His voice work as Kirk is just so over the top that it makes it hard to hate the character, even when he is hurling insults at Regina and company. I honestly think he's my favorite character besides Regina, thanks to Alex's performance as him. After Dino Crisis, he went back to mainly doing live action work, with him playing small roles in numerous TV shows and movies. But sprinkled throughout his live action works are some voiceover roles, and funnily enough, he played a character named Ledge in the animated TV series Cyber Chase, which Robert Tinkler also took part in. And much like him, Alex Karzis still continues to get roles today.
Take the elevator up from the control room.
The voice of the squad's serious leader Gale, Adrian Truss, started his career in the early to mid-1980s, but he didn't start getting consistent work until the mid-1990s. His most notable roles at the time were the Nighthawk and a few other small characters in the Never-Ending Story animated series, and as Percy and Gizmo in Roly Poly Oly. In the midst of this role, he got the role of Gale. This role was more serious than the previous ones mentioned, but that didn't mean he did a bad job by any means, as he gave Gale the voice of a battle-hardened leader. And like every voice actor in this game, he did a great job doing it. Once the role was completed, he continued his roles in Roly Poly Oly, and when that show ended, he went on to voice multiple characters such as Admiral DeGill in Atomic Betty, and Jerry Lewis in Totally Spies for seasons 3 through 6. These are just a small fraction of the roles he had after Dino Crisis, with him still getting work to this day. with most of them being voiceover roles.
Okay, let's move on.
The voice of the squad's lovable jokester and tech guy Rick was Richard Yearwood, who started his career in the early 1980s, with him getting consistent but small live-acting roles in TV shows. In 1987, he got his first voice role as Paul in the short-lived animated TV series Dinosaurs. But if you were a kid growing up in the 90s, then there is one animated character that you most likely heard him voicing. And that is none other than Donkey Kong in the Donkey Kong Country animated TV show.
Holy Jesus.
Our love is stronger than a golden banana.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
While voicing the iconic character, he would get the role of Rick. I know I may like Regina and Kirk more for different reasons, but Rick is such an entertaining character, thanks to Richard's voice work. And when his work was done, he would continue to voice Donkey Kong for a few more years. After it, his two most notable roles would be in one animated and one live-action TV show. The animated one was called Growing Up Creepy, and he would voice the character Budge. The live-action show was called Insecurity, and he would play the character Benjamin Nadeau. And I probably butchered that name.
It must be Cooper.
Both shows were short-lived, and after the early 2010s, he has seemingly stepped away from both acting and voice acting, with him taking a directorial role in multiple TV shows, with him directing a bunch of episodes for the HGTV show Love It or List It.
What are you talking about? He's asking for our help. We don't leave our own behind.
Now for our fiery redhead lead and the squad's do-it-all member, Regina, who is voiced by Stephanie Morgenstern. Her career began in the early 1980s, and just like Richard Yearwood, she mainly had small acting roles in TV shows. But in the mid-1990s, she started doing voice work, and here is where she began getting notable roles, with her voicing Sailor Venus in the mid-90s dubbed version of Sailor Moon.
Shame on you for terrorizing people! It's up to us to stop you!
As well as Ayame in the Power Stone anime. She then got the role of Regina, and just like her fellow voice actors, she did an outstanding job here, with her giving Regina a stoic but somewhat humorous personality. Afterwards, she went on to voice act for numerous roles, with her most recent standout being the role of Yin in Yin Yang Yo. Around the late 2000s, she took a step back from acting and voice acting in order to become the creator, writer, and director for the TV series Flashpoint, alongside her husband Mark Ellis. They would be credited for the entire series, and once it concluded, Stephanie would go on to create and write for another TV series called X Company. When that ended, she would attain the role of executive producer and consultant for the TV series Allegiance, where she would also be credited with writing 6 episodes.
End of the line for you, handsome. You're extinct!
Overall, the whole cast did a great job voicing their respective characters, with there being no real standouts in terms of bad quality, with each voice actor continuing their careers to this day, which is always nice to see. And with that, we have reached the end of the video. Summarizing how I feel about this game is a bit difficult, to be honest. As I've said before, there are many glaring issues in terms of environmental, enemy, and weapon variety. But the experience is helped with puzzle variety, character personality, and the combat feeling good, which isn't surprising since Dino Crisis is made by the same people who created Resident Evil. As I said a while ago, the series takes a huge 180 with its sequel, as it throws away the survival horror elements from this game and goes full arcade action with there being kill combos and a point system. But that conversation will have to wait. I want to thank you for watching the video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.